Call the Honourable David Cunliffe in reply.
Mr Speaker, in this short summing up, may I touch on some of the arguments that have been raised around the House. The government noted that 7 out of 8 universities have 1 student rep and that 7 out of 8 have 2 staff reps. What then is the problem about writing into law that as of right? Although I think it's obvious that 2 student reps elected as of right with democratic rights is the way to go, and that does, Mr Bishop, support the critic and conscience role of universities. You know, there are arguments raised by the government that they should have small boards, but then in a very puzzling contribution, Mr Foster Bell quoted a number of overseas universities that, while reputable institutions had boards of 20, 30, 40 members. I'm not quite sure what point he was trying to make, because that flew in the exact opposite direction to the law change which this bill seeks to reverse. Mr Speaker, the government then took refuge in the argument that small boards with no student reps are better, contradicting the earlier point that most of the unis have at least 1 student rep. So we looked through the list of institutions which have no student reps. Guess which ones popped up? Taratahi Agricultural Training College had no student representation. It did have National MP Barbara Kuriga on the board, but that didn't stop 5 years of systematic rorting, resulting in a payback of $6.25 million. I think an independent student voice would have spotted that rort because the board was asleep. Oh, and if that's not enough, Mr Speaker, what about Te Wānanga Awanuirangi? They had no student on the board either, but they also ripped the taxpayer off so badly that the Warriors football team was awarded a 3-month diploma for turning up for 1 day. Do you think a student rep on the board might have stood up and said, that's just a little bit suspicious? And if the National Party was so okay with students on the board, they wouldn't have told the Waiariki Institute of Technology student representation to shut up about the merger, or they would no longer get funding for the Student Association. That is the kind of, I said earlier, jackboot tactics that this bill seeks to outlaw. And if it wasn't happening, we wouldn't need to enshrine in law what, admittedly, in some cases, happens in practice. So that's the principled argument. But, Mr Speaker, I think the government missed the message at the start, which is opposition parties are seeking to find a workable new way forward. Actually, this bill is designed to get the debate to a select committee. What we want to do is work across the House and with stakeholders across the sector to find a new way. Perhaps it won't involve taking the boards back to the size that they once were, even if, thank you Mr Foster Bell, Oxford and Cambridge and a whole lot of others are much bigger. But maybe there's room for compromise on that. And maybe the compromise here is something about ensuring that there is a proper right for student representation and staff representation, rather than happening by accident or by dint of perseverance in the face of an ideological approach from a government which actually Mr Foster Bell and Mr Williamson exhibited when they said university students' associations are just a hotbed for political apartchicks. You know, I wonder if they said that to the former president of the Canterbury University Students' Association, the Honourable Peter Dunn, who is in a position to influence this bill, and sir, I hope that he will reflect his experience as a former student union president and cast his vote for the voice of students to be heard as of right in institutions across the country. Mr Speaker, this bill represents a genuine attempt by the sector working across the House to find a new way forward, a consensus way forward, a compromise forward that will allow the whole sector to engage systematically, properly, with protection of their independent rights, to get a win-win outcome of institutions, sir, which understand joint value creation, that are going for shared value. I see John Young there, an experienced academic. He would normally involve his students. He would want to see staff represented. He must be deeply uncomfortable sitting on that side, sir, of the fence where those rights are currently not enshrined in law. Mr. Speaker, this is a genuine attempt by the sector and opposition parties to provide a win-win future, one that underpins the democratic rights of students and staff to have a voice in the institutions that are there to serve them and all New Zealanders. Thank you.
Thank you. I was making a genuine attempt to get you to sit down at the end of the 5 minutes. Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
32 in favour.
Green Party.
14 in favour.
New Zealand First.
12 votes in favour.
Māori Party.
2 in favour.
Act New Zealand.
1 opposed.
United Future.
1 opposed.
Members, the ayes are 60 and the noes are 61. The motion is not agreed to. Call on members' order of the day number 3.
Births, deaths, marriages and relationships